So, hello everyone, welcome to my theory and explanation of the ending of Attack on Titan Season 2. So first and foremost, this is no song here, there's no animation here, so yeah, so this is not a video if you actually watch the ending, right? We're gonna go through the screens here and talk about the screens, so we're gonna actually show the ending. So, and that's all for this video is about. But more importantly, this video is extremely spoiling, okay? You have to read the manga up to date, pretty much. So if you're an anime only watcher, as the title says, do not watch this video. This is like, this ending is a homework pretty much for the up-to-date manga reader, which some animes do sometimes, right? Or like they spoil what happens and so on. And this is why I'm interested in this ending, because it's so incredibly spoiling. And some of the scenes are like, wow, this is something we learned just a few weeks back, like a month back or whatever, like 3-4 months, was it one monthly manga, right? So it's like, wow, what the hell is happening in this ending? It is true though that you probably can't understand anything really if you haven't read the manga. And some people say, oh, this anime ending is spoiling for the manga, but I don't think so actually. I'm gonna talk about some of the screens, and some of the screens that are showing like, oh, here's some kind of war that's gonna happen in the manga. No. That was happened before the manga started. So I'm gonna go in here. I think everything we see in the ending is about the past. And there's one screen that I haven't figured out for a second what it means. The 3, 4, 5 screen. So if someone knows what that is, be sure to comment and tell me what that means, because I have no idea what that is. So anyway, long story short, I used to date this girl last year, and she was really into Attack on Titan. It was her favorite anime, and so on. And that's why I invest a lot of time to like reading all the side chapters. Even some Titan I've read, and every OVA and everything. So I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I would say I'm pretty up there, right? So that's why I'm into that. That being said, though, if you're an anime only watcher and you're more interested in the whole like history of the Titan world, in the world and so on, because this probably won't spoil so much about the actual current storyline, so to speak, of the characters. This is more like spoiling just the whole backstory of everything. So it's amazingly spoiling, right? And I gotta say that even if you're a manga reader, you can't be like 10 chapters behind in the manga. This is gonna spoil for you as well, probably. So you have to actually be like up to date, okay? So let's go on it. But you have been warned, like you have been warned. Like seriously, don't watch this thing if you're not up to date. So anyway, in the first scene here, we see, this is very clear. I think we ever read the manga. This is where the devil and Ymir is getting the shrine, creates the titans, and yeah, you know, like this is very obvious. I think everyone knows what that means. And then the next scene, well, I don't see it. This is clearly, I think this is very clear here. This is a shadow that is standing on the beach, right? Because this water is cutting the shadow. So this is just going back to like Eren and Armin wanting to go to the ocean, potentially the whole Marion and Lodian thing in the ocean. I think this is a person standing on the ocean, right? So that is cutting the shadow there, looking down, you know, or whatever, standing at the beach. Pretty, yeah, cutting the shadow, pretty simple. However, here, it's really interesting. So here we see some kind of woman rights, some kind of war, and this is court disputed or not, if this is the Lodian's fault or not. But I think you can say pretty clearly here, this third image here that I will see after the water and so on, is when the war is starting. This is in the past of the manga, this is like almost 2000 years ago in the manga. This is then either when Ymir started the war, so I guess the right side is Ymir, probably like the spoiling of her body and so on, or it's whatever the human started the war, who actually started the war and so on. But I think this is where the war is starting. Kind of simple image to see here. And yeah, and that's very interesting because later on we're gonna see more war pages, and I'm gonna base this on this thing that they're all like connected more on that side. And in the next image, we do see this thing. This is clearly used. This is one of those few images that actually are about the current arc, right, that we have in the anime. Because this ending is very weird because it shows so much history from, so that we found out quite recently in the manga. But this image, the food can, it's clearly an image, right, where we're talking about, like, how can I say that? This image is primarily more about, okay, this is gonna happen now with Ymir, this is blah blah blah, this is the tower that we see later on, we probably see, I don't know exactly, but episode, this is 5 or 6 episodes maybe in the anime, right? This is an image then I mean, it's pretty clear what it is, right? This one of those food cans that Ymir is gonna find. It's gonna have the text on it, like the old language that only she can read because she's from the whatever Mauryan Empire world, right? And we later on get another image, which is a lot of like old language on it, which you can skip whatever, you can clear what that means, right? Yeah, so this is like this is one of the weird parts with this ending, because while it's showing history, like the last image for this before this was that should be when the war started 2 years ago, and then we see image of the war later on. They're also kind of throwing in these like Ymir pages here, right? Or whatever. So that is a little weird, and this ending is kind of inconsistent in that sense, because if you ignore the Ymir pages, like this one and the language, if you ignore these things, then you have a pretty much like a storytelling. I mean, real, because you have, if you ignore this thing, and if you ignore the text thing, and then you also ignore the 3, 4, 5 next image here, if you ignore those things, then you have Ymir doing the deal, Ymir, you know, starting the war, Ymir fighting the war, Ymir losing the war, and going to paradise. So actually, there's a story here exactly from like the beginning of the game of the world, right, to the end of where we are right now in the manga. So actually have like a complete storyline there. However, though, what this says, when we look at it again, is that is this about Ymir actually being the real Ymir, right? Because this is pretty much what I'm thinking here, because that could be some foreshadowing then for the manga, should not confirm or not, if she's actually the real Ymir, right? Because if you ignore the Ymir pages here, then it's purely the war from the devil to the current manga. So that is very interesting, that part. And then we have this next image here, and I actually have no idea. I just wrote it here. I have no idea actually. I would love if someone come and told me what is it about this image here. So we see these symbols here. First I thought it read 45. That's about the years where Ymir is the Dancing Titan thing. So that could make some sense before she's eating the Dancing Titan. But yeah, it says 3, 4, 5, right? It's about 3 there, and so I know it's like supposed to be 1 to 9 maybe, and you know, talking about the Titan powers. But yeah, I don't know actually. I have this as the image. I have least I haven't figured out yet what it means. So it's very interesting. And then lastly we have already cut it out. Here we go. So later here we also see this image where we have the Ymir, the language you can read, right? So again, I feel that it's very interesting because we do see pretty much a storyline, right, for the history of the war and so on, and it's like, so this is again pushing us to the Ymir is actual real Ymir, something like that, because they have the same name, the worship Ymir and so on, and she hasn't been shown in the manga for whatever, like what, 4 years? Yeah, like she's been in the manga for like 4 chapters, right? So that's very interesting, because if you go back and look at, I just skipped it earlier, right? But if you go back and look at the other image that we have, it's a little out of history though, because we have the Rice family, it's a little bit of history, but I think this is very clear. So if you look at this image here, the next image we can see, this image here is clearly the Rice family for sure, right? Behind them we have the cultist, the wall cultist, and they are like, yeah, and we have a more wall cultist thing, which is very clear to the wall cultist. So we have this thing, and this one of course follows up with the next image where it's like scrolling down. And when you look at this image in the ending, there are children eating like human flesh, right? And it's like some dead body in front of them. And this is very clear. This is when the king, or the real king, right? The person with the pregnant powers is getting eaten by their, you know, their child, or maybe their cousin, or like their nephew or something, right? They've seen the Rice family. So the powers carried on, the cultists looking at this, yeah, so this is the truth, all the wall cultists know, so the true family. It's a little weird actually, I've said in the ending though, that this is pushed it right now. This should be, if you ask me, in the ending, because I think it's going exactly chronologically here. If this was later after the last scene in the ending, that would make more sense, and then there would be a straight line of just history events. But still I would say this is still about the history in general of the world, right? Where the Ymir part is kind of in there. That's what the Ymir part is the much weird part, because and also forces that the Ymir is the real Ymir. But yeah, I think this is very clear that the dead body from them is likely the last former king. We do know, of course, in the manga that only one of them is actually going to eat it, but they do eat each other like eventually if the one has to die and so on, right? So it's more like a symbolic that the child has to eat their parent or whatever, right? To kind of keep the power going. So I think it's very clear if you read the manga, this is pretty much, this must be this thing. And then later on then, this is interesting though that this was before, and this next image I show here. Some people are saying that, oh, this is actually like foreshadowing, it's gonna be a war between the Marians and blah blah blah. But no, this is actually the history. This is like way back, if you ask me. The next image here, I think it's way back, and all the images coming here, this is way before. This is like 150 years ago. This is going before Paradise. So this is what it's about here. This is the end. Not this one, but the later ones are the war. This is actually, you know, this we see here. There's a wars, right? So Titans attacking them, but this is not Paradise. Okay, this is not the Elodians. I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure this is not the Elodians. This is defending here. The next image here. This is not the Elodians that all fight Titans here with spears and so on, right? Which is technology. It can't be. They don't have much better technology than this thing. And the wars are too short, right? This is not actually Paradise at all. This is just some random country, probably the Marians, being attacked by the Elodians. So this is going way back in history again. After we saw the image where earlier we saw, if we go back again, right? This is the image. This is following on the story of like the Elodians spawning. This is following this image where they're spawning kind of the Titan army. So that is what this is coming from. This is actually then following on that, right? And the next image again, we see some kind of like, okay, here Titans surrounding them, or maybe they're losing. It's gonna go for the sunlight here. This might be where they're losing, I think. And yeah, so this is like keep going on in the actual war. And that's very interesting. That is the next image, of course. Actually, no, not next image, but then we have the wall cult and so on. But if we skip the wall thing, then we have this image, which is very telling to me. So I just skip the wall part, I'm talking about later. But then we see this thing here, right? This is Elodian having lost the wars. This is very interesting here. This is actually, so you see them coming, you see them spawning, you see them attacking some random medieval village, right? This is actually before, right? This is not Paradise attacking, this is not Elodian attacking them, right? Here they have lost the war, because here they are leaving the Titans, right? Here they are leaving, and in the next image, I think it's very clear. They're actually going to Paradise. This is the image here. We see these people running away to the sun, right? They're running to the ocean. This image here is about the Elodians having lost the war, being forced / escaping to Paradise and creating this main story where we are right now, right? This is what it's about. That is what it's about. And if you look at the next image, we see the ocean, right, which they're coming to. This is both Erin and Army's Gold Course. They get there in the latest magazine, pretty much, right? And so both this ocean here is both where the Elodians are going, and then see the next image, and it makes complete sense because then we also see them spawning, you know, yeah, they're now spawning Titans there, right? And that makes complete sense if you read the manga. So the last image before that, we see the Elodians going to the ocean, them escaping to go to Paradise, and then we see these Titans spawning up from the ground, which is clearly that, okay, they are actually, you know, being created, right, by the Marians to attack the actual place where the new Elodians living, right, in the wars, right. So this ending is just kind of showing the old wars, right, showing that the Titan power from the devil, spawning this army, fighting normal humans or whatever, right, fighting them different wars in the medieval time, losing that war as all there, then being forced to leave and go to the sun / the ocean, and then we see the last page where the ocean is spawning the Titans, right, because we know that Marians are going to the edge of Paradise and spawning Titans there to attack the Elodians, so that is explained there. So it is a very like this ending is about like showing the history, right, of that. However, though, they have some inputting into that, and I skipped it earlier here, still not wrong here. And we also have this image here, which is in between the war and the losing part. But still, this is clearly the wall cult, right? This is very clearly the wall cult. This is pretty much has an image from before they are attacked by the big fight with Eren and Annie. So this is the wall cult worshipping and so on. And even though it's not chronological order there, because they kind of very quickly throw in this image in the, you know, before the war and the losing. However, though, they are kind of symbolic connected, right? Because the image before this is the Elodians fighting the war, like attacking humans, attacking Marians. Then we see this thing, and then we see another image of World Cup. Then we see the next image, which is like, oh, they've lost now, so they're going to the sun, to the ocean, right? So if you combine those two things, you think, okay, this is actually about they fought, they lost, and because they lost, they had to create the World Cup, had to create this, you know, the dream of, you know, removing the memory to Elodians and so on, right? So that is explaining, this is combined, right? And actually, obviously, the next image, if you ask me, this is coming here after the wall cult image. This is still the wall cult, and it's a woman being focused on the image here. I think it's very clearly it's Frida Rice. It has to be. I think it's very clear that the former, the real monarch, right, the real king. That of course they kill and has power now and so on, right? That's very clear to me. That they go to Vault Cut and then skip this image, so that's very clear. But yeah, and after this, of course, you go back and then you see this thing, right? So that's how it's connected. The Vault Cult is connected to the whole losing and going to paradise. And then last, I think it's very clear. Lastly, we have this image, which is like, this is very easy here because you can use number up them. So there are 8 people here, right? I'm trying to do 8. See that? There's 8 people. 8 people that are worshipping a woman, right? And it's a crossover face if you go up and look at the whole ending. And how many powers are they for that? It's 9 powers. 9 powers. 8 people worshipping the woman. Woman is clearly Ymir, and the other titans are of course under her because they're getting her power, right? The eating of her power. So yeah, so this is the split of the 9 titan powers. And of course that also following the image before this, because we know that okay, they also have lost. They still have the Ymir power, the real, the real basic power. But we know that all the titans are split up, right? But we could talk about the marriage and so on, right? So we know that this different titan powers are very important, right? In the current manga, you saw the old guy with like whatever he is, like the Jawbreaker guys. You see them having different powers, right? It's very important connecting these powers, and if someone dies, now the Elodian will, inherit the powers. I'm not a big fan of the whole magical aspect of that, but yeah, this is pretty clear, right? So in the last image, it's connecting back to the losing the war, right? Because it's like they lost the war, and now they have the cultist thing, and they have a few powers that are connected on them, and the other worshipper of Ymir is like stuck in the Ymerian lands. They also have some powers, and they're split up between these people, right? So yeah, so I think this ending is more about showing the whole war, like showing for the beginning, like 2000 years ago, that was 800 years ago, Ymir did the deal. Ymir started the war, or maybe the line, but anyway, someone started the war between the Titan people, the Elodians, and the humans, and then they lost the war. They had a long war, right? Medieval fighting the war. They lost the war, being forced to go to the ocean, and then the ocean is spawning the Titan instead, because then of course they're attacking them by using more Titan against them, and they're hiding here, dreaming about, and then like so on. And of course the wall cult, and yeah, and between that we have the wall cult, we have, the Frida Rice, and of course we have the whole Rice family eating their parents to, keep hearing the power structure. Those things are quickly thrown in there in the middle. That makes sense. And the only thing that's very tricky then is the Ymir part, really, because we have Ymir part, we have Ymir with the Cam, the old language, and that is the only thing that's pointing into the current anime arc. But Ymir has been gone since in the manga, right? So that kind of is frustrating again, that she might be the real Ymir, as his name is. Ymir is alright, but also because it's so much focused on showing those parts, that can be the foreshadowing. And of course these numbers, I have no idea what they mean. It's something I haven't figured out yet, I feel. But they are split between the Ymir parts. So I'm guessing because my first idea was that is that the number of years she has been a Titan for the 5, or is that like the age when it started and so on, right? So yes, I feel that's for the last part. But anyway, hope you enjoy this. Be sure to comment if you know what the 3, 4, 5 means. I have not figured it out. And generally, I think this ending is about showing the Elodians starting the war, right, and then losing the war, getting up here, as I mentioned, right, and never cut, so on. If you're an anime only watcher, you probably can't figure it out, right, at all, I guess. I'm wondering how an anime watcher seeing this being like, a devil. But yeah, my last point I want to say is that though, I do have to say though that I dislike the whole. That is magic. So I hope this whole manga story is untrue. Because I don't like the whole it's just magic. Like, yeah, it's not explaining stuff. They use it's magic, right? so anyway, see you guys. Be sure to subscribe and have a great day.